All right. We'll just go ahead and try this out. Thank you so much for your patience, everyone. Happy Thursday evening. Thank you so much for participating and joining us for this informational session. My name is Mike Olivier. I will be your moderator for today's session. The intention of this meeting and the purpose is to share information about ASDB and the happenings with the agency. Before we go into the presentation, I just want to set up some ground rules here and how best this meeting will run via Zoom. Let me show the next slide here. We will also have audio distributing as well for each of these slides, and then I will sign the slide.
Fantastic. Here is audio description now. So we transitioned out of the first slide, which simply featured the Arizona state flag, as well as text that read, Arizona State Schools for the Deaf and the Blind, Staff and Community Meetings, January 19th through the 2026. Presenter, Annette Reichman, Superintendent. Now we transition to the second slide, which is titled Meeting Norms and Structure, and that's followed by a heading that reads, Please note that, as well as 6 additional bullet points of text.
All right. I'll explain a little bit each of these bullet points. First, we want to emphasize that this meeting is informational only. There will be a Q&A, a question and answer part at the end of today's session. So that means during the presentation, our superintendent, Annette Reichman, will be presenting. While you're watching her presentation, and if a question pops up, you can go ahead and submit that question directly to me, the host, via the chat. And I have a full team back behind here as well, making sure that we collect all these questions and get them inputted. And you can send those questions throughout the presentation. Once we can collect all these answers, we will put them on a list. If they aren't answered and you feel like your question wasn't answered, don't worry. ASDB has set up a website as well, where a page has a frequently asked questions about what is happening with our move and campus. And that FAQ section will have any questions that were collected during today's session, and the answer will be there as well. So please just be patient with us. We're trying to get all of the questions and answers submitted on that FAQ page within 48 hours. And for tonight's session, you can send your chats, your questions directly through the chat to the host, which is me, Mike Olivier. My role as the moderator for today's meeting is just to make sure that everything works out smoothly. And obviously, I will be doing the opening part. Annette, our superintendent, will take the lead on the rest of the presentation, and then I'll pop up at the end to conclude with our question and answer segment and closing by 7 p.m. I would like to remind everyone to have respectful dialogue and communication and keep an opening mind through the chat. Please have respectful dialogue through that as well when you're sending your questions. Please be careful to formulate your questions and send them through the chat instead of rapid firing, so that way we can make sure to understand all of the questions and collect them all. If there are any disruptions, the moderator will end the meeting. We do look forward to learning more about what is happening here at ASDB, so we'll go ahead and start with our superintendent, Annette Reichman, for her presentation. Thank you so much. Welcome. Perfect.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that introduction. And thank you to all of you for joining us this evening. I appreciate you taking the time to listen and learn and try to understand what is happening at ASDB. We are hoping that throughout this evening, some of your questions will be answered. Next slide, please.
On the next slide, the title is Why Are We Here? This is followed by a heading which reads questions, and below that additional 3 bullet points of text to be addressed.
Over the last roughly 3 years, I have had these 3 questions that have been prevalent and that I have been asking myself, looking into the future of ASDB. The first question that I've been asking myself is, how do we set ASDB up for success for the next 50 years? How do we keep ASDB standing strong? ASDB has a 114-year, very proud history of providing education and services to students who are deaf, blind, deaf-blind. So how do we continue that rich history into the future? And what will that look like? The second question that I've been asking myself is, how do we continue to provide high quality educational services to our students who are deaf, who are blind, with limited funding, and recognize that there will be fewer students as we move into the future? I will be talking about that a little bit more later, but we are projecting that the number of students that we will educate and serve is going to continue to decline. There will always be students who are deaf, who are blind, and need our services, but perhaps not as many of them. So how do we become smaller and utilize our limited resources to provide those educational services for the students we serve? And the third question that I've been asking myself, how do we align our student enrollment numbers with our limited financial resources with our facilities? Our facilities on the Tucson campus, as well as the Phoenix campus, have continued to deteriorate. So facing the impact of these 3 situations, what are our options for the future? During my presentation this evening, I want you to bear in mind and remember those 3 questions and think about how we are attempting to address and answer those 3 questions. Next slide, please.
This slide is titled Respecting Our While Protecting Our Future and is followed by 9 bullet points, each of which feature multiple sentences to be addressed now.
First of all, before I continue the presentation, I want to take a moment and acknowledge all of our emotions around this topic. The changes that we are facing now are causing grief. Tucson Campus has more than 100 years of a very proud history, culture, community, traditions. And the students who are graduating, have graduated, come back to work at that campus, become teachers there, become alumni there, and they retire and volunteer there. So there has been a very strong community in Tucson who is rooted in that Tucson campus. You all know that. I know that. So as we talk about relocating, does that then mean that we are giving up all of that? because we're giving up that land? No, we are not giving up our history, our culture, our traditions. We will carry all of that with us to our new location. Next slide, please.
This slide is titled Our Current Reality. It features two main bullet points below the first of four sub-bullet points. At the very bottom of this slide, the same phrase is both underlined and boldened to emphasize importance and will be spoken aloud.
Over the last 2 years, and now into a third year, we have had a budget deficit. We have attempted to address our budget deficit. For example, we have stopped almost all out-of-state travel for professional development. We have tried to reduce other expenses and operating costs. We have tried to figure out how we can save money. This year, in July of 2025, was the first time that we did not offer pay increases to our staff in almost 10 years. We have been committed to offering pay increases every single year until the start of our school year on July 1st. For the very first time in a very long time, we just did not have the money to offer those increases. And we will not be offering pay increases again on July 1st of 2026. 2026. I am hopeful that the following year, in 2027, we may be able to offer pay increases again. We have implemented a hiring freeze. People who resign or retire or otherwise leave the agency have not been replaced. We have been trying to reduce the number of staff through attrition. Those actions have been insufficient. We have a true challenge with our student count continuing to decline and our revenue continuing to decline, paired with our aging facilities that continue to deteriorate. Those three factors combined have meant that we are now at a tipping point. We have to take action. We have to make changes to try to keep the agency strong and standing for the next 50 years. Next slide, please.
This slide is titled The Challenges, Student Counts, and Trends. It features a line graph titled Tucson Campus. At the bottom of the graph on the x-axis is marked in years, and it moves in increments of 25. It starts at the year the school was founded, this being ASDB campus, then moves to 1925, 50, and through on all the way to 2025. On the y-axis, this is titled enrollment or student count, and in increments of 100. It starts at 0 and moves to 500. Now, as far as the information on the graph itself, the line starts at the inception of ASDB at a student count of 7, progressively ticks upwards until after the year 1975, and peaks at a student enrollment of 375, and then by the present year, it declines down to 126.
Sorry, Annette, just a moment, if I may. This is Mike.
Can you please adjust your camera just a little bit, please? It looks like the camera is missing some of your signing. If you're able to fix that.
Is that better?
Yes. Thank you. Apologize about that.
Not a problem. Thank you. So this graph represents Tucson Campus enrollment numbers. As you can see, back in 1912, we started with just 7 students, and that number grew year over year. When we got to 1980, we hit our peak of enrollment at 375 students on the Tucson campus. That year, we had 90 students living in our dorms on campus. After 1980, the number of students attending the Tucson campus began to steadily decline. Over the last 10 years, that number remained fairly steady between 110 to 135 students. Currently, we have about 115 students on the Tucson campus. We do not expect that more students will start attending the Tucson campus. We anticipate that trend to continue to slowly decline. The Phoenix Day School for the Deaf, PDSD, interestingly enough, up until about 2 to 3 years ago, had a fairly steady student count of about 250, with minor fluctuations year to year. And then about 3 years ago, that number started to decline. Last year, it declined again, and this year, we have about 195 students on the Phoenix campus. So PDSD has also started to show that decline in enrollment as well. Looking at our itinerant services, for a very long time, our itinerant services served about 1,100 to 1,200 students every year. For a very long time, that number was steady. Now, itinerant services are serving about 860, thereabouts, maybe a little bit more than that. But that number too has begun to decline. And then looking at our early learning program, our birth to 3 children that we serve, and the number of families that we serve whose babies are deaf, hard of hearing, blind, or visually impaired, that number as well has begun to decline. It started to change again about 2 to 3 years ago. In the future, it looks like that trend will continue, and that is what we are going to have to plan for. So we are now trying to determine how best to provide education and services to all of those students with our programs. Next slide, please.
This slide is titled The Challenges, Student Enrollment Counts and Trends, Enrollment Outlook. It features a separate line graph, this time titled Arizona Deaf and Hard of Hearing Birth Projections at 2.2 per 1,000 births. Below that, on the x-axis, still measured in years. However, the increments have shifted to years of 5. So the start of the x-axis starts at 2010, moves progressively over 5 years all the way through the year 2035. On the y-axis, which is titled Deaf and Hard of Hearing Births, 2.2 per 1,000 births, the increments move in groups of 50, so they start at 0 and peak out at 250. Now, as far as the line itself on the graph, just after the year 2010, the line starts at 187 births and gradually declines with an average of about 2 births less year over year until it ends at a projection of 137 births in the year 2035.
Looking at that line graph, we can see a downward trend, and we anticipate a continued downward trend in the number of babies born who are deaf and hard of hearing. You may ask how we're able to project a number like that. That number is tied to the general number of babies being born on an annual basis. I learned about 2 years ago that we women are not having babies. The number of babies being born here in the United States and across the world in Europe, Asia, and every other area is steadily declining. We know that if we wanted to maintain the population numbers as they are, women would have to average 2.2 babies per mother or woman, so to speak, within a certain age range. However, currently in Arizona, our average is 1.6. Some women are, of course, still having children, but fewer women are having children than previously. If you've been reading the newspapers or watching the news, then you know that school districts across Arizona are closing their elementary schools. Again, we ask ourselves why they're closing those schools. It is because the number of children coming into kindergarten every fall is about half the number that it was 20 years ago. We don't have the same number of children that are coming into our elementary schools. And so those school districts are having to make the difficult choice to close certain elementary schools. Back to this chart now, we see that the overall number of babies who are born, we then extrapolate the percentage of those babies who might be born deaf or hard of hearing, and we can project that that number will decline in alignment with the decline in overall birth rates. That is the reason that we are not expecting to see an increase in our student count. All of our programs are now starting to see that same decline. And we don't expect that to change anytime soon. So we have to plan for that. Next slide, please.
This slide is titled The Challenges, Historical and Projected Actuals, and is followed by 3 sentences of quantitative data about ASDB.
So, why is student count so important? In Arizona, our funding system is tied to our student count. If we have an increase in our number of students, then our revenue increases. However, if we have a decrease in our student enrollment, our revenue commensurately decreases as well. When I began as superintendent in 2016, we were able to balance our budget pretty much every year. For about 8 years, we were able to earn a little bit more than what we were spending. So we had a bit of a surplus from year to year. That was true until 2 years ago, and that changed. For the first time, we had a deficit, and that deficit was $1.7 million. The reason that deficit happened, again, has to do with our student count declining. but the number of staff remained the same. Our transportation expenses went up. Our operation costs went up as well. Last year, we ended the year in a deficit again of about $2.6 million. And this year, we are projecting that we will close the year with about a $3.2 million deficit. The money that we had in surplus, because of that deficit, it had to be depleted and spent down. We cannot continue to operate in that manner. We have to make some changes. Next slide, please.
This slide is titled The Challenges, Snapshot of Expenditures, and primarily features a pie chart titled Agency Spending. The pie chart is divided into 7 sections, the largest of which include Tucson Campus, 22%, Phoenix Day School for the Deaf, 20%, itinerant programs, 17%, and early learning programs, birth to 3 and preschool, 14%. The 3 smaller sections include the agency-wide administration, operations, and support at 12%, statewide deaf programs at 11%, and at the smallest, statewide blind programs for 4%. Adjacent to this pie chart at the right are 2 speech bubbles, one of which features text that reads, SY 2025 through 26 student count as of December 1st, 2025 is 1,860, and the other speech bubble respectively reads, staffing filled as of December 5th, 2025 is 577.07 filled full-time equivalents and 661 positions.
As you can see, this indicates where our money is spent. We spend a portion of our money for Tucson Campus, for Phoenix Campus, itinerant services, deaf programs, blind programs, and administration. So this pie chart is a good representation of how our money is divided. Altogether, we have about 1,860 students across the state that we educate and serve. Next slide, please.
This slide is a continuation of the previous, still titled Snapshot of Expenditures. It now primarily features a pie chart which is divided into only 3 sections. This pie chart is titled Where Does the Money Go? The largest section, which is highlighted blue, is labeled Direct to Student at 64%. The 2 smaller sections are of equal percentage and are respectively titled Other Supports at 18% and Classroom and Student Support also at 18%. Adjacent to this pie chart is a heading which reads Main Components of Budget and includes 4 bullet points which are to be addressed. The final sentence on this slide reads, as ASDB is service-based, a significant percentage, approximately 77% of expenditures across all areas are payroll-related.
You can see with this circular graph, the blue and orange areas are monies that we spend for direct student services, providing them education and support. The remaining green, 18%, is our operational cost. So the vast majority of our resources are going directly to our students. And we are continuing with that commitment. We spend most of our money on staff, including their salaries and ERE, meaning their benefit packages. We also contract some services for students, and we have transportation costs as well, in addition to repair and maintenance of our facilities. Those are the 4 primary categories of expenditures. Next slide, please.
This slide is titled The Challenges, Aging Facilities and Insufficient Funding. It's followed by a heading which reads Tucson Campus Infrastructure Review, and is followed by approximately 7 bullet points, all of which feature quantitative data about the Tucson campus and will be addressed.
This slide is all about our Tucson campus. On our Tucson campus, we have more than 300,000 square feet of space. And we have 31 buildings. It is an absolutely enormous campus. It's almost like a community college in its size. Those buildings are aging. The average age of those buildings is about 50 years old. We can compare that to the Phoenix campus. Phoenix campus is about half the size of the Tucson campus. Phoenix campus has 16 buildings. And the buildings in Phoenix are younger, but they are not young. The average age of buildings on the Phoenix campus is about 40 years old. Both campuses have some buildings that are dilapidated. And on Tucson campus, as you look at those buildings, some of them are not actually suitable for use. They are in very poor condition. Last year, the Arizona Department of Administration, ADOA, came to do an inspection of all of the buildings on Tucson campus. ADOA let us know that about 80% of our buildings on that campus are not suitable for use by staff or students. They are either in unsuitable or poor condition. That is 80% of our buildings. That is the challenge we face. As you saw, we do not have additional funding in our budget to do appropriate repairs and renovations of those buildings on the Tucson campus or the Phoenix campus. So that is a significant challenge for us right now. Next slide, please.
This slide is titled Aging Facilities and Insufficient Funding, a continuum of the previous, and only features 2 additional sentences of text.
Again, we are talking about the Tucson campus. Over 10 years, it costs us about $1 million a year to operate our Tucson campus. But that cost over the last few years has gone up and up and up. It is now almost $3 million a year simply to operate the Tucson campus. The reason for that is because, well, for example, we are not replacing our HVAC system, our AC units. So our HVAC systems are old and they break down frequently. We often have to call in a repair person to come in and try to fix the units that we have to just keep them running a little bit longer. And we have done a lot of Band-Aid type solutions. And now we are stacking Band-Aids on Band-Aids on the Tucson campus. We cannot continue in this manner. Next slide, please.
This slide is titled Redesign Outreach Programs and features a heading which reads The Redesign of Regional Cooperatives to Statewide Outreach Programs. Below that, it features a main bullet point, 2 additional sub-bullet points below that, And for the second of those sub-bullet points, an additional 2 bullet points, all of which are to be addressed.
Setting aside the topic of facilities for a moment, which I will get back to, I'd like to shift our focus to services. Over the past many years, ASDB has a model that separates our school or campus-based programs from our itinerant services. Those two programs have operated separately. We have students that come to us and attend one of our campus-based programs. We provide their education on our campuses in both Tucson and Phoenix. And then for those students who do not come to our campuses, they stay in their local school districts. And some of their school districts have signed agreements with ASDB. So we then send our teachers of the deaf or teachers of the visually impaired to provide itinerant-based support within their own local school district for deaf, blind, and students of other needs in those school districts. And those are separate programs. We are proposing to change that model. The proposal would be to provide more of a continuum of services, something in between a campus-based program and an itinerant services model. That in between, hopefully, will provide the benefit of both. So we have restructured the ASDB educational programs, brought together itinerant services with the early learning program, and then we are adding what we are calling a cluster site model. As we have identified, there across the state are about 6 different areas that may benefit from a cluster site. And as you may know, there is one that we are currently working with, which is the Tucson Unified School District, or TUSD. We are trying to figure out how we will be able to provide the benefit of our services as well as the benefit that TUSD services can offer. We are proposing that we establish cluster sites at one high school and one cluster site at a middle school. Some ASDB students are coming from the Tucson Unified School District. And the idea is that we will implement a resource room or a specialized room where students can go at that high school. They can take advantage of regular classes on that campus and have a variety of course offerings that ASDB is not currently able to offer on our campuses. And then there will also be that resource room where those students can come and receive specialized services. They will get the additional supports that they need from our teachers of the visually impaired. So we will be providing that specially designed instruction per their IEPs. We will be providing their assistive technology, Braille instruction, Braille production and materials. We will provide orientation and mobility, and all of those very specialized services for our blind and visually impaired students that we are currently offering on campus, we will bring to that cluster site in that high school at TUSD and in the middle school as well. My understanding is that there is some concern about the original selection, Cholla High School. A couple of days ago, I did have a phone conversation with the superintendent of TUSD. And he said that they are looking at other options to see if they might be able to find a high school that's a better fit for the needs of the students who are blind and visually impaired. The idea being that we are collaborating with TUSD. We are sharing our resources. They have resources, we have resources, and by pulling those together, our students can have a very similar benefit as they might have had at our school, because they will still have each other to socialize with, and they will still have the benefit of the expertise of our teachers and support service providers. And they will also then have the opportunity to take courses within their high school that ASDB has not been able to offer because we have such a small student population. So we will do that for the deaf and hard of hearing students across the state. And we are currently exploring a variety of options. Right now, we are going through IEP team processing meetings, and having conversations with parents, school districts, and the students to try to determine if a cluster site is available, if that cluster site would be the least restrictive environment for that child. If the answer is no, then we will continue to work with the school for students and who are blind and visually impaired to find the best option. Currently, we have 35 students on ASDB's campus who are blind and visually impaired. So ASB, the Arizona School for the Blind, has 35 students. 10 of that 35 will be graduating this year in May. So that means in the fall, there will be 25 students at ASB. And then in the following May, we will have another 10 who are graduating. So that means in 2 years, we're going to be down to just 15 students at ASB, maybe 15 to 20. And that is including kindergarten through 12th grade. That is the reason that we are trying to figure out the best strategy for providing educational supports for those students who are blind and visually impaired. That is our intention, and that is what we are currently trying to do. Next slide, please.
This slide is titled Redesign Outreach Programs 2, is followed by a heading which reads the Redesigned Outreach Program, and additionally features 5 bullet points of text, 2 of which are underlined for importance. They read, makes the continuum of services more robust for students, parents, and local school districts, and ensures access to certified teachers and specialists, including children in general education settings. This is why this redesign matters to students and families.
I have already gone into this, the content on this slide, so I think we'll go ahead and go to the next slide.
This slide reads Lease of Copper Creek Facility and features 3 bullet point sentences below.
Talking about the Copper Creek facility, for us to relocate to Copper Creek, it will save us a lot of money in our operating expenses. And I know that there have folks who have been a bit confused by that. And I can understand it can be confusing because we then still have the land for the Tucson campus. But with the relocation, we can reduce our use of electricity and other utilities, such as water, and all of the other costs associated with staying open. And we would have a very bare minimum of services necessary to keep the property safe. At Copper Creek, our cost would be only the lease. So we have done an analysis of the cost of operating Tucson campus versus the cost of the lease. And leasing Copper Creek is about half the cost of operating Tucson campus, even when you incorporate the cost of the move. We will still begin to see cost savings almost immediately with the electricity, gas, water, and all of those other expenses associated with operating the Tucson campus. So for us, when we look at that facility, that is why we became attracted to that opportunity to see if that might be an option for us. Next slide, please.
This slide is titled Lease of Copper Creek Facility and includes a heading which reads Copper Creek Elementary School. Below that, 4 bullet points regarding the quantitative data about Copper Creek which are to be voiced.
We previously had conducted an analysis when we were creating a master facilities plan. The master facilities plan was created about 3 years ago, and it documented how much space we would actually need to serve our students. Copper Creek meets our needs in terms of space for the number of students that we are serving. I want to take a moment to show a video of Copper Creek for you to be able to see the facility. Please go ahead.
A video begins with a photo slideshow of Copper Creek Elementary. A wide exterior view of a school campus, single and two-story buildings sit behind fencing. The camera shows the front exterior of the site. We transition to a view of a bus drop-off area. The paved roadway curves alongside the buildings with loading and unloading space. A separate parent drop-off area appears. Parking spaces and sidewalks are visible near the building entrance. The front office area appears. A reception desk sits near the entrance with office doors behind it. We then transition to a library space. Bookshelves line the walls with tables and seating in the center. Next, we see a photo of a stairwell. Steps lead upward and downward with railings on both sides. We transition to a photo of a classroom. Student desks and chairs are arranged facing the front of the room. Another classroom view appears from a different angle. Whiteboards and storage cabinets line the walls. A teacher office is shown. A desk chair and shelving are visible inside the room. We then transition to a photo of an elevator. Control buttons and doors are visible. A hallway leading to additional rooms is shown. Doors and wall signage appear along the corridor. We now move to a multi-purpose room, an open interior space with a wide floor area and minimal furnishings. The camera then transitions to a kitchen area. Counters, appliances, and preparation surfaces are visible. A playground area is shown. Play structures stand on a surfaced play area. We then transition to an athletics field. An open field with fencing surrounds the area. The camera then shows the back exterior of the building. Service areas and exterior walls are visible. A courtyard view appears. An open outdoor space sits between buildings with walkways and seating. Another exterior angle shows the campus layout. Buildings, pathways, and surrounding space are visible together. The video then ends and fades to black. A video
With the conclusion of that video, we transition to a slide titled Possibilities. It features two main headings, the first of which reads, A Relocated Tucson Campus, and has an additional 3 bullet points below. The second heading reads, Budget/Address Strategic Priorities, and features 2 main bullet points, the first of which has an additional 3 sub-bullet points, all of which are to be addressed.
As you just saw, the Copper Creek facility is beautiful. It is one big building, which means students do not have to go outside in between classes. They're able to stay indoors, and they can get from class to class, to the occupational or physical therapy room, to their speech therapy, or any of their other related and support services without having to walk clear across campus to get to another building or receive their services. It is all in one building. That building has only one entrance and exit. Our Tucson campus has 4 entrances and exits, and it is much harder to make sure that people who are not supposed to be there aren't able to enter campus. Whereas at Copper Creek, with only one entrance and exit, it is much easier to control who is coming in to our campus. So for our students, we do see the benefit of that school building. And for our budget, we anticipate saving money that we can then reallocate to teachers, classroom expenses, and student services. So the one question that has come up is, will students still have transportation to Copper Creek? And the answer is a resounding yes. We will still provide the same transportation and support that we have. For some students, it will be farther, but for other students, it's going to be closer. And it's, of course, going to depend on where those families live. You may also ask, why can't we just renovate the Tucson campus? Why can't we ask the state for funding to do so? We have been asking the state for funding. We provide an annual request to the Arizona Department of Administration saying explicitly what our needs are in terms of renovation, repair, and maintenance. We have what is called a capital improvement plan, and we submit a request annually. ADOA does not have sufficient funding to fulfill all of the requests they receive, so they allocate as much as they can to each of the agencies, but it is not enough to keep Tucson campus in good condition. So when we did the master facilities plan, our plan B was to build a new building on Tucson campus where our students would be in one big building similar to what they'll be in at Copper Creek, but this new building would be on Tucson campus. With that plan in mind, we asked ADOA if we would be able to get an appropriation, a one-time appropriation of funding to build that building, and ADOA could not give us state money to do that. We then reached out to some state legislators and asked if perhaps the state legislature could give us an appropriation. And the answer we received was that the state legislature was not going to give us any additional funding for a new building. So we were a bit stuck at that point. We are not a school district, so we cannot ask for bonds. We do not have a way of getting money in that manner. We do not have the authority to borrow money. So we can't just go to a bank and get money to build our building. We are currently proposing legislation, and we are asking the state legislature to consider our bills. those bills would give us the authority to borrow money. So we'll see if that does pass in the spring session. It's not necessarily likely, but we are continuing to pursue every avenue and every option available to us. So far, we have hit barriers at every turn, and the final option that we currently have is to relocate and lease a building. That is something that we can do. We can sell a portion of the Tucson campus property and keep the money from that sale. Fortunately, our state statute does allow us to keep the proceeds of the sale of that property. Will we sell the entire campus? No. We will sell a portion of the campus. We have not determined which portion we'll sell just yet, but if we sell a portion of it, we can get that revenue, and that will give us a little bit of flexibility. If we then can also convince the state legislature to pass our bills, that would then give us the authority to borrow money. So the borrowed money combined with the proceeds of our sale may mean that we can build a new building on the remainder of Tucson campus that we did not sell. So that is one idea, and that would be further down the road. For right now, we are trying to figure out how to get the agency the flexibility it needs so that we can have good facilities to serve our students. Next slide, please.
This slide is titled A New Vision for ASDB and simply features a paragraph of text to be read aloud.
This slide says that we have been here for over 100 years. We intend to remain an agency serving students for the next 50. In order to do that, we have to create a new vision, and we have to figure out a different service model to provide education and support to our students, those who are deaf and blind. That is our intention. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up at this time and turn it over to Mike so he can facilitate our Q&A portion.
All right. Thank you so much, Annette, for that presentation and that informational session. Now we're going to go ahead and to the question and answer part. First question. Does the enrollment number that you cited include preschool students?
It does, yes.
All right. Next question. Is it possible to show only the last 30 years of data enrollment for the Tucson campus? I would also like to see enrollment data from the period when Annette has been running the school. I want to better understand why enrollment has declined during that time.
We have multiple spreadsheets with multiple data points. So if you would like to see an additional PowerPoint with different types of enrollment data, we have tried to keep it fairly simple and limited because I could present on data all night long. So we tried to keep it fairly concise at the same time, attempting to show what is happening with our student count with ASDBs.
All right, this is Mike again. Next question. It seems like you're providing more inclusion in the mainstream classroom. Are you expanding interpreting services to meet that demand?
Yes, that is one topic that we are currently exploring. Right now, we have, I think, 9 deaf students who are living in our dorms. And those students may end up needing educational interpreters if they were to go back to their local school districts. So we are currently trying to determine how to prepare for the fall and what that will look like.
All right, thank you. Could the IEP referral process that ASDB currently has be a factor in low registration?
Yes, we have had multiple conversations with parents and with the community, as well as with our teachers and staff, trying to figure out exactly how we might be able to attract more students to come to our schools, both the Phoenix Day School for the Deaf and our Tucson campus schools. The challenge for us, as I was recently mentioning, first is that the number of students in the state of Arizona as a whole has declined and continues to decline. And that has an impact on us. The second being that the number of babies born is declining. And again, of course, that impacts us as well. All of our programs, it's not just the 2 school-based programs, but it is all of our programs that are declining. And then, yes, the IDEA has a requirement for a mainstream setting, with that being considered the least restrictive environment, or the LRE, for many students. And then our statute has a requirement that we have to use the IEP team at the school district where that child resides to discuss the possibility of placement in one of our campus-based programs. More and more often, school districts and parents are choosing not to place their child in one of our campus-based programs. So to give you an example of that, was interesting, and going back to the discussion of dorm students, we, as I said, had 90 dorm students at one time in 1980. When I became superintendent in 2016, we had 44 dorm students. Now we have 16 dorm students. One thing that really surprised me is that since dorm students tend to be from reservations or tribal lands, previously that was the case. However, those 16 dorm students, of those 16 dorm students, only 2 come from an Indigenous community. So, does that mean then that the Indigenous community is also deciding that they don't want to send their students, their children, all the way down to Tucson to live in the dorms? It seems that they are choosing not to do so. So there is also a large component of family decision, and our society as a whole focusing more on mainstreaming. So the question then for us is, how can we keep our schools, especially for the opportunities for ASL acquisition and immersion for our deaf and hard of hearing students and deaf-blind students? And then also, how can we continue to provide itinerant services for students who need it, but then also be able to offer something in between. If, for example, we have a population in Prescott Valley that has several students who are from that local school district, somewhere between 5 and 10 who are deaf or hard of hearing, could we then set up a cluster site in Prescott Valley so those kids could all go to that one school, and we collaborate with the Prescott Valley School District so that those students, yes, are mainstreamed. They have their regular classes in their regular classrooms, but they still have part of the day in their resource room where they have the opportunity to socialize with their deaf peers, become friends with their deaf peers, and also have access to our experts, teachers of the deaf and other specialists working in that classroom to provide them specially designed instruction, interpreting services, what have you, assistive technology as well. So whatever it is that those students need could then be provided in that cluster site. So that's the idea. And we have done some research and found that other states are already doing that. So I think that it is important that we try.
All right, Mike here. Can you clarify specifically those cluster site programs? Are they specifically for blind and VI students only?
No, they would not be only blind or VI. We are looking at blind VI cluster sites, deaf hard of hearing cluster site, and also preschool cluster sites for deaf and hard of hearing preschoolers. So we are exploring 3 different types of cluster sites. Again, with some blind VI, some deaf or hard of hearing. And we are currently in talks with the J.O. Combs School District, which is out in the East Valley. They have about 4 or 5 preschool students who are deaf and hard of hearing. And so we are having conversations with them about potentially establishing a cluster site for their preschool for deaf and hard of hearing kiddos. They are not coming to PDSD preschool because that is just too far for those little guys.
All right, Mike here again. Next question. With ASB numbers being reported as low and falling lower, and with Copper Creek being large, can ASB students also be educated in the building with their ASB teachers and staff?
We have sufficient space at Copper Creek to do that. Yes. If, as we go through the IEP process and those IEP teams have a conversation with each student's family and school district, if those IEP teams agree that a cluster site is not going to be the least restrictive environment for that child and will not provide the benefits that the student needs, then we would offer Copper Creek facility as an option. But again, it's important to keep in mind the number of students is very, very small. We want to be able to provide the type of opportunities for those students that is similar to ASDB and their experience there, having that benefit, but at the same time, we want them to have opportunities to take different courses and have transitional supports and have different types of work experience, et cetera, et cetera. So we want to be able to offer that, which Tucson Unified School District is working with us to do. How that will happen, exactly what that will look like is yet to be seen, but we are working through that. And again, as I just mentioned, Cholla High School was originally proposed, and it seems like that may not be the best selection for a cluster site. So TUSD has taken that feedback, and they are currently looking at other options. we are continuing to collaborate with them on these types of conversations. And our intention is to be able to provide the best support and education for these kids as we can. We are not, by any means, forgetting our blind and BI students. And I was really sorry to see that perception from some folks, because that was not by any means our intent.
All right, moving on to the next question. Mike here again. So we're talking about TUSD for the school district. So students who don't live in that school district, suppose like they live out of town, would those students have a bypass to get into the system to TUSD, or would they have to follow the open enrollment?
That I am not actually sure about. I know that there has been some conversation about open enrollment. So if other school districts have a student who is blind or visually impaired and they want to take advantage of a cluster site at a different district, like TUSD, I am not sure if they would go through open enrollment to get to that cluster site or how exactly that would work. I am not clear on that, but I do know that that is being discussed. Marana has a few students, and other school districts have a few students nearby as well. And so how there is conversation about how those school districts can collaborate and potentially send their students to the cluster site at TUSD. So we'll continue to work with them to try to determine an appropriate path for that to happen.
All right, now the next question is related to deaf-blind students. Where will they be placed?
The deaf-blind students that we currently have on the Tucson campus will relocate with us to Copper Creek.
All right, Mike here. We want some clarification. This question is related to the dorms. Those students living in the dorms, where are they going if Copper Creek doesn't have dormitories available?
We currently have 16 dorm students. 10 of them are deaf and 6 of them are blind or visually impaired. 4 of them will be graduating this year. So that will leave us with 12 dorm students. It is my understanding that we will have 8 or 9 deaf students and I think 3 blind students. And those students will probably go back to their local school district. But again, that is a conversation for the IEP team. They will be discussing that child's placement and how best to serve them. ASB has several leaders who are trying to figure out alternative options and different possibilities for those students. And that is not something that I can really talk thoroughly about right now because I don't know what the outcome of those IEP team meetings is going to be. And I don't know if we are going to be able to figure out an alternative pathway, but I do know that we cannot keep the dorms open. We don't have the resources to do so. And the number of students who are currently living in the dorms continues to decline every year. And we project that next year it will be down to 12. And in 2 years, it will likely be less.
All right, next question is looking at life skills and their programming. For those students and staff, where are they going to be placed?
Our life skills programming is moving to Copper Creek. If you're talking about the deaf, hard of hearing, and deaf-blind students who are in the life skills program, the blind and VI students who are in the life skills program are going through the IEP team process, also to determine best placement for them.
All right. Next question is related to transportation. With the move to Copper Creek, will transportation expenses increase?
I don't think so. I mean, because again, for some of the students, yes, it will be farther. However, for other students, it's going to be closer. We will also be collaborating with school districts for pickup points and drop-off points. So that will help us to save a bit of our transportation time as well. And the students will then be on the bus for a lesser amount of time. Right now, the school districts are having conversations with us, and we're talking about how we can collaborate with those districts to determine a meet point for drop-off and pickup. And I think that we're going to be able to work that out and make it work.
Right, next question. It seems ASDB is becoming more of a co-op school model than a regular day school like PDSD. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm not sure what you mean, actually. PDSD is, of course, a day school. With our Tucson campus relocating to Copper Creek, it is also becoming a day school.
Next question. Has there been any discussion about moving ASDB to Phoenix and combining the school and getting more funding that way? Have you guys thought of changing PDSD into ASDB?
Yes, actually, we have had some conversations about that. The possibility of combining the two campuses. And that may still happen. Again, the Tucson community has a very long and proud history on that campus, 114 years. And the lead of the agency and the headquarters have been on that campus for that entire time. That campus has been the heart and soul of the agency as well as the community. That has changed, of course, because I, as a superintendent, am here in Phoenix at PDSD, and some of our other administrators are here as well. So the headquarters, in a sense, has changed as Phoenix has grown. And the state agencies are primarily here, the legislators are here, et cetera. I know that the Tucson community really wants to retain the school campus and the school for the deaf. And we still have enough deaf students that we can continue to operate a mostly regular school, but as a day school.
All right, next question is related to the Tucson campus. Is it possible to keep the gym on ASDB's Tucson campus for sporting events while we close the rest of campus?
We are looking into and assessing all options along those lines. We did calculate the costs of keeping the gym because we do know the importance of the gym to the Tucson deaf community. They frequently come to our games, our sporting events, and other community events there. It's a safe place for the community to come and be together and have a good time. Again, the challenge for us is the cost associated with doing that. We did do a comparison. Suppose that we were to keep just the gym open, what would that cost look like? And then looking at if we were to close the gym, and of course, as we said, Copper Creek has a multi-purpose room. We can have PE classes there and we can have practices for sports in that room. Unfortunately, we can't actually have our games or sporting events in that multi-purpose room. There are other gyms in the nearby area that we could possibly rent for special events and for sporting events. So we did calculate the cost of both renting a gym for sporting events and other events versus retaining our current gym. There are lesser costs. It is cheaper if we were to rent something. For now, the plan is to close the gym. The plan is to use the multi-purpose room for PE classes and practices. And then we will partner with local companies or schools to borrow their gyms, to rent their gyms for sporting events.
All right, thank you so much. Next question. Were staff from the blind side let go?
There will be some teachers and staff who are riffed or laid off. That is probably going to happen. There will be a handful of teachers and staff who are laid off.
All right, next question. Did students attempt a walkout that was countered by a threat of suspension?
I'm not aware of a threat of suspension. I do know that students were doing protests on the sidewalk in front of the school during school hours. And we have to have our students in the classroom. We are responsible for them. And so our principal and assistant principals, the three of them walked out and gathered the students back and had them come back to campus and come back into class because they are required to be in the classroom. So that is what happened. Was there a threat of suspending them? Not that I'm aware of. I had not heard that.
Okay, we're wrapping up here shortly. We just have a few more questions and then we'll close our session for today. I understand the issue of declining enrollment, but has ASDB stopped taking new students? I work with a student who is very interested in attending, but was told that they were not enrolling new students.
I can't speak to that specific situation because I'm not aware of what student that may have been. But I do know that we have had a waiting list that started about a year ago. The reason that we established a waiting list is because we received feedback from our teachers that their classrooms were full. They could not handle any more students. So they asked us for one more teacher to be hired. Unfortunately, we were not ready to open up hiring for additional teachers at that time. And if we were at capacity with our current teaching staff, then that meant we needed to take a hiatus from accepting new students. So that pause did create a waiting list. I did recently have a conversation with one of our leaders, and I asked who was on that waiting list and if they were still on that waiting list. The information that I was given was that we had 4 potential students who were on the waiting list. Upon further review, there were 2 of them who we were not going to be accepting into ASDB, and the remaining 2 were potential candidates for attending ASDB. However, now with the relocation to Copper Creek, we are doing IEP team meetings with our current ASDB students. And we'll contact those 2 students and their parents, as well as their school districts, and have that conversation about how we might be able to provide support for the 2 of them. And I think that both of them are actually from the Phoenix area. And that is my understanding of the situation. I could be mistaken as far as with only having some of the information. So
Thank you so much. Next question. Thank you so much for improving the presentation and speaking very clearly. That was a comment. And the question, why was this information rollout done so quickly when the school has been considering partnering with Amphi School District for several months now?
we first approached Copper Creek in November, just this most recent November. Copper Creek asked us to keep that conversation confidential because they have their own process and their own school board, and their school board needed to approve the closing of their 4 elementary schools first. And of course, we can understand that. Closing an elementary school is a very emotional moment for parents. And so Copper Creek wanted to have time to go through their own process with their families and school board. And they were doing their own town halls, their own presentations, and talking to parents about the possibilities of closing those 4 elementary schools in the district. And they were collecting feedback from families. And so their board just approved the closure of those 4 elementary schools last week. So they asked us to wait until the last week of January, the very end of January, to notify our families about that. The board meeting was last week. They did approve the closure of those 4 schools. And then the last week of January, we'll be approving our lease with ASDB, or their lease with ASDB. So that was their timeline and their process that they asked us to respect. And we, of course, wanted to be respectful of their process. The challenge, of course, is that when we came back in January, that very first week of January after winter break, people were already talking. Rumors were starting to spread. So our plan was to inform everyone in the last week of January, and we bumped that up by 2 weeks. We did talk to the Amphi School District to let them know that, we really just can't wait because this information is already out there. And we've got students and staff and parents, community members who are already sharing feedback, and they want to know what's going on. And they gave us their blessing. They did agree that we could go ahead and share that information. So we rolled out that information a week and a half ago and started the process of hosting these community meetings as well as our staff meetings to share more detailed information. So again, our intention was honorable, as was theirs. We wanted to inform everyone in a logical way, in a sequence that worked for everyone, and that effort unfortunately did not go the way we had intended.
All right. We have 3 questions left. We just want to keep everyone in the know about that. We are just running a little over time, but just reminding everyone to keep an eye out on our ASDB website for that FAQ section. So if your question that you submitted tonight hasn't been answered yet, you can click that FAQ on that website, which will have all the answers there. There is also a jot form on that website as well that is linked to an inbox where we will be receiving those questions as well to answer. Next question is regarding the 30-mile radius. Could you expand upon that and explain that for us?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Both of our schools, the Phoenix campus as well as the Tucson campus, have a 30-mile radius for our transportation. Recently, our Attorney General, or AG, provided some feedback, and ADE also provided some feedback, stating that we could not keep the 30-mile radius, that it was too restrictive. Bear in mind that that 30-mile radius is the largest radius for pickup of any school districts. That it's much larger than any other school district has to do, and it is exceptionally challenging for us. But we did amend our policy to ensure that we are in compliance with the IDEA. So now our policy states, if a student lives 31, 32, 35 or so miles from the school, we will use the IEP team to discuss and determine how we would be able to provide that student with transportation, having a parent bring the child to a pickup point, and meeting our transportation, or a bus or a van at that pickup point. So, and allowing that student to come to our school and essentially meeting in the middle. Some students do need door-to-door transportation because of their specific needs, and that would need to be documented in the IEP. Some school districts are also starting to collaborate with us, and they are potentially going to transport some of our students to a meeting point where they would drop them off, we would pick them up and bring them the rest of the way. We do have a bit of flexibility depending on the age of the student and the student's tolerance for being on the bus for a longer time.
All right, 2 left. So doesn't the continuum of services mandated by IDEA require there to be a residential placement option for an IEP team to consider? What will this option be for blind students here in Arizona?
The IDEA does not say anything about dorms. Our IEPs, if you look through them, don't actually mention residential programming or the dorms. Dorms have been an option provided to students, parents, and school districts So if that school district is not able to provide the appropriate supports for that specific student, then they have had the option to to refer the student to Tucson campus in a residential capacity so the student has access to the appropriate education on our campus so that they are able to go to school with us. But the dorm itself is not at all in the IDEA, and it is not documented in the IEP. The IEP is about the appropriate education and FAPE, free and appropriate public education, and least restrictive environment.
Last question. Again, thank you so much for sticking out with these last ones. What will happen to the partnerships and the use of the theater on campus?
I don't know. The BPAC is a beautiful facility. And I know that the community in the area absolutely loves having the BPAC there. Again, the challenge for us is that while we do, in fact, lease the facility to other agencies and earn some money when they use it for their performances, our earnings do not actually cover our costs. So we are using state funding to support the BPAC. And again, we cannot continue to operate that way. I am hopeful that someone in the community will take a look at the BPAC and figure out a way to take that over and keep that alive, keep that operating for the arts community in the area.
Again, we want to send our thank you to Annette for answering all these questions. We had a lot of questions this meeting. Thank you so much for the audience participation. We weren't able to answer all the questions that were gathered today, but please take a look at the ASDB website with the page there with frequently asked questions about the move. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And again, thank you so much to our superintendent, Annette Reitman. And everyone, have a good night. Take care.
Thank you so much, everyone. Good evening.
Bye.